Dry January.
I'm Carl. I'm an alcoholic, addict, whatever you want to call me. My sobriety date is August 22nd, 2014.
I'm Lindsey. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is September 6th, 2015.
This is SoberPod.
SoberPod.com. Yeah, SoberPod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.
SoberPod is a podcast dedicated to the idea that one addict or alcoholic, hey, that's me and you, helping one another is crucial to building a life in recovery. Isn't that funny? We're sitting here just talking about recovery, but yet we are helping each other and other people. I just think it's great. Anyway,
definitely.
I just love how this works. Anyway, join us this season as we read from our book and Lindsey's book at times. My book being 366 effing days sober, and Lindsey's book is The Spirit Vigilante. And you can find those by going to going to SoberPod.com, and then the other is going to thespiritvigilante.com. And don't forget to stay active and stay sober. Lindsey, how was your holiday?
It was good. It was pretty chill, actually. Yeah. Very
chill?
much by design, because I monitor myself and what I attend and what I do, and I don't do gifts or anything like that. So
you mentioned it.
Yeah. So it was good.
I pushed my boundaries. I didn't. Yet again, I always think that I can handle certain things. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm fucking sober, man. And and then I did not do well. Let's just say, like, I did lose my shit at one point, and it was on my mother actually, which was just like, I don't feel sad. Some people will be like, oh, I feel sad that I cussed my mother out. No, I don't feel sad at all. But what I do feel is like I pushed my boundary, and I went beyond what I think I should have been doing. You know what I mean? And it's just like, so then lesson learned, and a lesson learned for Carl to understand how to redraw a boundary. I think that's the idea, right? So I was like, oh, okay, what does this mean for Carl, right? And so I had to, it took me a good day to like kind of, I slept on it, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, then I acted upon it and redrew some boundaries, man. That was it. So that was my Christmas present to myself.
A learning moment. You're just collecting data, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What Carl can and cannot do in this world,
Yes.
That's it right there.
We're learning more every day.
Isn't that every day, though? Isn't that every goddamn day?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what we're going to do is based off the topic of this episode, is we're going to talk a little bit about Dry January together, and of course we're going to read from our books because, dude, we gotta promote something out here. So we usually on this podcast we usually read from the book 366 effing days sober, and whatever it brings to mind for you to talk about Dry January, by all means go ahead. And I'm going to read, or you can read. Do you have your book handy?
I don't. That's horrible.
Okay. Well, then I will. I'm going to leave that in, by the way. Then I will be reading from your book, Spirit Vigilante, and I because there's this little segment in there. It's like where you kind of like do this introduction in it about like kind of like meeting the reader, which is kind of cool. And I think it has a lot to do with like how somebody could approach, like, again, if you're just getting sober, and I know I said it like last episode or whatever, like don't put X's on calendars, it never works. But like sometimes it does. I just FYI, sometimes it does. So it was a bitter read actually. My January 1st was just bitter. So I do know a lot of people who actually have like January 1st as their sobriety date, and who actually have years, so but I'd say more often than not, it doesn't really work, so people do so I think we'll talk about that kind of stuff too. All right. So, which kind of does tie back into my reading for January 5th, right? And it's, I guess the overall topic, I just want to give it away, is really about honesty, but it was sparked by, I was standing on the sidewalk talking to a dude, and he was just lying out of his asshole. And my sponsor, after this dude left, said, "I don't believe a damn thing he said." It's just like, oh my God. So this is kind of where the reading comes from. It's January 5th. Has anyone ever stopped you mid-story and said, "I don't believe a word you're saying"? It doesn't happen often, but when it does, you better not be lying. You might be talking to someone who can smell a lie like a fart in a car and has the balls to call you on it. So, to save on some future embarrassment, it's time to start shutting the fuck up and start opening up. Get honest today. Calm down, chill the fuck out, and speak the truth. Reflections. How many times have you lied this week? Geez, I'm gonna say at least twice. So, were they white lies or big, thick, and juicy lies? Are you going to make them right or just let them die out with your conscience? And the daily challenge for this reading is call someone you lied to and confess. Oh my God, could you imagine? Every day. Anyway, I mean, especially early in recovery. Let me just say, if you're in recovery, maybe. So,
right.
Tell that person why you lied. Make it right. If you can't do that, take a vow of silence today and see how long you can go without speaking.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Better than saying "shut the fuck up," I guess.
Yeah.
So then, Lindsey, I want to read yours. I just read a little excerpt from your book, and this is from the title "A Vision for You." I guess people are going to go like, "How the hell am I getting into this podcast about recovery?" And I'm just like getting bombarded with these readings. But I think it'll help because it's really inspirational. I think your reading's probably more inspirational than mine. And so here it is. It says, "My vision for you. You are so much farther along in your journey than you think. You wouldn't have gravitated toward this book otherwise. There is a reason it found you at this exact moment in time. You are ready to hear these words. What does ready mean? Your brain may not feel ready, but your soul is, so don't wait. Mood follows action." If I could repeat that 7 times, I would. Mood follows action. "I want you to feel free to be you. I want you to take life less seriously and let it be a little bit easier and a lot more fun. This freedom, this allowance to live in accordance with your true nature," that's where the honesty comes in, "is a natural high that no drug, drink, dessert, pleasure, or person or addiction can come close to matching. This experience comes from within, and it never runs out." I'm just going to stop it there. So, talking about dry January, and both of our readings are both, of the readings that we just read. It like reminds me of like getting honest in our early recovery, getting honest with yourself about who you are as it relates to drinking and as it relates to drugging and all of the behaviors. It's when I first got sober, it's kind of shocking to like, and I not only that, I'm still in a lot of denial about who I am and what I'm about. I'd say for like, dude, like for the first 60 days, I was just like, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not, yet again, this time around, I'm still saying that. Like, I was like, I don't want to go to AA. I don't want to do that shit. I just need to stop drinking and I'm good. I don't have any other problems other than my drinking. That's it. Like I stopped drugging years ago, so therefore that's not a problem. And I stopped drinking now 60 days, proven that I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah, of course.
Even though all I think about is like the 30 cans of beer still in my fridge and the bottle of rum still sitting on my counter, I am dying to get to those things. Like every day I wake up, I am battling a mental battle with the liquid in my fridge, and I can't not think about it. It's crazy, right? I mean, that's literally crazy behavior.
And
right?
and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and I'm a caged fucking panther running around my house. Like I'm like a blown up balloon, and if you talk to me, I will pop. Right? That's all there is to it. So, how did you I know? So, talk about dry January. A lot of people are coming from dry January point of view because all of our listens go up. Like people listen and they're like, in this episode being titled Dry January, they're totally going to listen. what would you tell somebody who has never been in recovery, who has had an issue with their alcohol on some level, and they're coming to listen to this podcast and they just heard these 2 readings? What do you think that they would be thinking?
Well, I'd like to extend my reading says, there's a reason this book found you at the time that it did. And I think anyone listening to your podcast, whatever episode it is, there's a reason this episode found you when it did too. Mm-hmm. So you're where you're meant to be. Keep listening. And
I hate that. God, that makes me want to just I hate, like, my sponsor would always tell me that shit. Oh, yeah. No, Carl, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Whenever I was upset.
You don't know me. Yeah, how do you know where I'm supposed to be right now? So we get that. We get that too. We're very real about it. Yeah. Dry January. If there's a reason you're curious about it, then I would listen to that. And no matter what your drinking looks like, you could have 1 drink a week and be wondering about it, or be a full-blown alcoholic. But if you're wondering, I would say go for it. And it's temporary. It's 1 day at a time. Take stock in what you notice during those days. Be honest with yourself about that. And I didn't hear the term Dry January until relatively recently when I was in sobriety. But I used to do this thing called the Whole 30, which was
30-day challenge. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the same thing. I that's how I always heard about it, and then it kind of moved into we're only going to do this once a year. Go ahead.
So it was the Whole 30, and it was a lot of different elimination of a lot of different things, gluten, dairy, all of that, and alcohol being part of it. So it was just kind of a byproduct of that. And I was trying to be healthier. And so I could go the 30 days, and that kind of worked against my recovery in a way in the beginning, because I can go, like you said, I can go 30, 60 days without it. So I'm not an alcoholic. But then the moment day 31 came, and I tried so hard to have 1 drink, and was like, now that I've had nothing, 1 beer is going to taste so good. Like, I'll be so ecstatic with just 1 drink. And it was just, as you know, right back off. So I do recommend trying it. And if you have somebody to talk about it with, that would be good. It can be someone in recovery or someone doing it with you. But just getting curious and being open to what that brings up for you, I think would be my advice.
Yeah, my beginning this last time into recovery was, I think, kind of spurred by a 30-day challenge on some level, right? Like, I was like, well, it was definitely an internal thought, like, oh, I can go 30 days, right? But I couldn't get 3 days. My problem is, like, I couldn't. I mean, I could get 3 days. I rarely got 5. Right. So I got, my record was 5 days in like 2 years without a drink. Like I got 5 whole days. And then so when you're doing the Dry January thing, it's like, I think you're like, I want to kind of put it into a couple camps, right? Like, to say there's the people that, like, they drink heavy on the weekends, and then they kind of by Sunday afternoon they're like, man, I don't really want to drink anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm feeling like, wow, I've really worn myself out Friday and Saturday, and
weekend warriors.
Yeah, right. Like, Sunday I'm like, I'm done, and that kind of stuff, and so they kind of rest, and and then they basically kind of, but they look forward to a Friday, right? So they go to work and they get all their stuff done, and they do all the little, stuff that we do, and but then Friday like comes around and they're back at doing it, and it could be a matter of, let me just say, immaturity. It could be a big part of it. Mm-hmm. It could be a matter of like wanting to go out with your friends and go party, quote unquote, and there's that level of alcohol abuse, right? Is, I guess, what you would call it, right? Because it's not doing you any favors. Let's just say, you maybe you're gaining a few pounds every once in a while, like that kind of stuff. But but really, more or less, you're not really having any major consequences, right? You're kind of getting along and you're doing fine. Well, that's alcohol use, period, right?
Mhm.
But then there's like the next level, which is like the one who like does all that stuff, but come, maybe they get worn out on Sunday or whatever, and then come Tuesday, they're like, a drink would be pretty good about now, and then they kind of do the same thing over again, right?
Mhm.
So they become more of like this hard drinker, and then it's like, or maybe like they're having 2 stiff ones, a day or something like that, and it's just like, so, but they're not getting shit faced, you know what I mean? They're not pissing or shitting their pants yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But so then that's the thing. So for me, it's like I climb into the other category, right? I climbed into drinking. I did some of those things for a while, like I did, and at times I was like, and I did at times do more than 5 days in my younger years, in my early 30s, But by my mid 30s, I was more than a heavy drinker, and I was definitely reliant on my intake, let's just say. So in the final 2 years, I was drinking 32 ounces of rum every night, and along with 32 ounces of Coke. It really messes up your teeth, by the way. And so I basically had I had alcohol dependence, right? I had what they term now as alcohol use disorder.
Yes.
And or otherwise known as alcoholism, right? Carl's an alcoholic. And so I was like really I crossed the line. Somewhere along the line I crossed the line. And so as it came to me approaching dry January, like what did I I thought that I was the previous, alcohol, just drinking on the weekends, kind of like I thought I was just a hard drinker. That's really what I thought. And I was in total denial about that stuff. So one of the things I would suggest to anybody doing the 30-day challenge is pay attention to how you feel when you stop drinking. Like, or do you, as described in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when I take a drink, there's that, right? Which is, when I take a drink, do I have control over the amount that I take? Maybe at some point in my drinking, I did. I could have 2 stiff drinks and then I was done for the night. But later, I couldn't control the amount. Sometimes it would take 24 ounces or 32 ounces. I don't know, but it never really stopped at the 8-ounce drinks. Or, you know what I mean? It never really stopped, let's just say. And then, of course, once you are stopped drinking, what is your mental condition, or how do you think about drinking after you stop? For me, it was a struggle. It was always a struggle. It was I never not, right? So I never just like put down the drink and was like, 20 days, like, never thought about it. Never thought about it in the whole 20 days.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, for me, it was like, holy shit. So I could identify, not knowing this though, I could have identified my predisposition to being a full-fledged alcoholic or a very active alcoholic if I would have just paid attention to my thought process early on, right? So early on, if I would have been able to, in that 20 days, if I would have honestly, and we're talking from an honest standpoint, really honest, it's so hard to be truly self-honest, but if I would have really reflected on it and said, which is this one guy, he says it in a meeting all the time, in the silence of my own room, to look at what alcohol is doing to me and no longer for me, right? In the quietness of my own mind, to really look at that and say, am I having an issue with alcohol in this sense? Do I think about it too much, even though I put it down? Do I look forward, like you said, it's like, I'm going to have that one drink and it's going to be really good. It's like,
I knew there was always an end to the break, right?
Yeah.
When I did those 30-day things. Yeah.
So then I kind of look at it and go, so somebody trying a 30-day trial, it's really a matter of like, one, like, how much you use and how do you use alcohol, right? How does it affect you? What are the impact that it's having on you? What is it doing to you, no longer for you? And then the other thing is when you stop, how do you consider it? What is your thought process around it? For me, it became, especially this last time, like I had a battle going on in my mind over 30 cans of beer and half a bottle of rum sitting on my counter. I had an ongoing everyday relationship with someday I'm going to touch you again and it's going to be okay. Right? It just so strange and so weird to like, I didn't think about anybody else or anything as much as I thought about those 30 cans in that glass bottle in 30 days. So I guess the question here to ask yourself about being in dry January, what is your what would be the resolution? What's the outcome? Why are you doing dry January? First of all, right? That has to be a question. Did you ever try doing like the dry January, not just like but dry, like without alcohol? Did you ever try that before you got sober this last time?
No.
I
didn't know what it was. At least I didn't know what it was, which doesn't mean it didn't exist. But no one was talking to me about dry January.
But what about just not drinking? What about just not drinking?
Yeah, I would do those whole 30 things. And so that was part of it, was no alcohol. Yeah. So I would do that for 30 days.
And then how did that work out? Like, what did you think about in terms of like your mindset? Like, did you think about alcohol in that time? Was it like a constant thing, like what I was talking about?
Yes, I thought about it. And I was trying to focus on the health part and kind of noticing the physical improvement in me. And that was just so eye-opening, like I didn't realize how much it was affecting me. But then I would go right back to it. When you were talking about the 30 pack and the bottle, it's almost like you're talking about a toxic lover that you're going to go back to and that you obsess about when you're apart from, even though it's not the best thing for you. But you just know. It's like
she is sexy magnetic. Though. I'll tell you that. She's so sexy.
Oh yeah.
She's got a great personality. She loves to dance.
Lure you right in. She's charming and funny. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know if I was self-aware enough to really think about how the absence of alcohol made me feel in those days. Looking back, I was still miserable and trying to keep everything together, but I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to be like, how is this making me feel? Why am I doing it? What, I think, like you said, it's so hard to be honest, but just being as honest as you can be at this point with yourself.
But that's why we're talking about it here, so people can have the wherewithal,
exactly.
Right? So they can literally go like, okay, here's two people who literally, had problems with alcohol, quote unquote. But that's the idea. It's like, it's so hard to be that because none of us, like there's not a single one of us that was like in 6th grade, when they were filling out like, what do you want to be when you grow up? None of us said an alcoholic, right? None of us said, oh, I want to sit in meetings with, ex-drunks all the time and do that shit, So I think that's kind of the hard part. It's like being that so self-effacing to say, oh, you know what? Like I have a problem, quote unquote. And then the other thing is like, let's just get like right down to the basics. Like most alcoholics, right? Question their drinking, right? And then,
yes.
And you know who's never questioned their drinking in my household, right? In my household, my wife has never questioned her intake ever. Not once. Not one time did she ever say, "Boy, I might have an issue," right? And and I know why, because when she has a Mike's Hard Lemonade or whatever, it's one. I'm just like, I'm going to say that again. She only has fucking one. And that's the thing. So if you have a problem, more than likely, see, that's the thing. Dry January is literally designed for people, because there's nobody going that doesn't have some form of a bad relationship with alcohol. There's nobody going like, oh, I'm doing dry January. They don't fucking need to. They do dry February. Right. They do dry March. And they do not have a poor relationship with alcohol, right?
I know.
So if you're doing dry January, chances are you have a problem with alcohol. And I mean that straight out. So what dry January really means is why don't you take the time right now while you're taking a quote unquote break and understand how bad your relationship is with alcohol, right? Are you in the first camp? Are you just having are you treating it like a liquid libation, a social lubricant kind of thing?
Yeah.
Or are you actually, so what that really means is you should probably be working on, I don't know, yourself a little bit more so you don't need liquid lubrication for your social shit. It's like, and then are you in the next camp? Are you a problem drinker, right? Are you just now like, or are you in the other camp, which is like, you definitely have a physical dependence on alcohol and it's gone too far, right? And it's something that you really need to examine. So I think, so most people, by the way, don't just suddenly wake up one day and go, oh, I think I might have a problem with alcohol. No, you actually, if you ever ask the fucking question, you have a problem with alcohol. That's all there's to it. And so, and then I love right now, if I'm looking at the stats on the podcast, this is where everybody just drops off listening right here.
Please stay.
No, it's a reality. It really is a reality. None of us want to face.
We don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. How many times did you ever try to stop drinking? Like if you did, like on a general count, hundreds, thousands.
Like to stop drinking forever?
No, just like you would wake up like on a Monday and go like, I'm not going to do that again, right?
Oh, I never said that.
Oh, really?
I until I decided to get sober, which I still haven't signed in blood anywhere that I'm never going to drink again. I really. The consequences didn't matter. Like I said, I would do the breaks to prove to myself that under the guise of health and food and nutrition, I think I was really trying to prove to myself that I didn't have a problem.
So yeah, you would have been dangerous to run with. You know what I mean? Because
yes, I was not a good influence. Like I said, no one's hitting me up to be like, "Do you want to do dry January with me?" Yeah, because they know the answer.
It's just not possible. Hey, do me a favor, take your gain and put it like onto the other, flip it around to the other. No, that one's good. No, leave that one. Yeah, that one. There you go. Right there. Yeah, there you go.
Is that good?
A little up, a little bit more towards the G, like right under the G. Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah. Now talk.
Testing. Yep. 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2,
Good
3.
deal. Okay.
Get me back on track.
Nobody's ever calling you for dry January.
No one's ever going to call me for the dry January or any kind of challenge that has to do with drinking because I had no shame around it. I wouldn't have said I was an alcoholic, but even when I started, one thing I did want to say, if you really are interested in exploring this dry January thing, go to some AA meetings. You don't have to talk. You don't have to just listen.
Sacrilege.
And if you're not an alcoholic, then you'll find out. Even if you're going to prove that to yourself that you're not an alcoholic, just go and see, what data you collect.
That's exactly what happened for me, which is, so I went this last time at age 42. And again, I was put into this stuff my whole life. So I was always had an aversion towards it because to me, it always represented what the system wanted me to do or something along these lines.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, my brain was just stupid about it. And then so when I did go in this time, I think that was the thing is I was like, you know what? I'm going to do what these fuckers are talking about. I'm going to show them. I'll fucking show them that it doesn't work. You know what I mean? I'll do everything that they're telling me to do and I'll fucking show them it doesn't work. And then sure enough, I was like, when I'm reading the books and I'm doing the materials and I'm doing the little, the step work and all that other stuff and examining my relationship with alcohol, quote unquote, I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
So that's when it started to reveal for me, actually. And I was like, and it's not that, here's the best part. If anybody's asking you these questions, it's not that they're not convincing you that you are an alcoholic. They're literally revealing your relationship with alcohol. That's all that it is. So, and some people find it so appalling to be asked their consumption, right? And the inability to tell the truth. How many times did you ever go to your doctor and they would ask you how many drinks you had a day? I just said 2, right? I had 2. That's all that I ever had. So if you talk to, that's just how that works, right? But if I was really honest with my doctor and I said, well, doctor, I drink 32 ounces of rum every night. He would have had me doing a medical intake for a treatment center that day.
Right.
You know what I mean? He wouldn't have allowed, he would have been like, whoa. Tell me that again.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for us to like come to terms with that. So when you sit in a meeting and if you can be honest and not say 2 drinks, right? If you could really.
Right.
But it's so hard. Like, how do you do that? How would you recommend, like, first of all, the best part about you don't have to tell your real name, right?
Yeah.
You don't
have
to say
to
shit
talk at all.
Yeah, you can say, you could just literally sit there in the back and just shut the fuck up.
And if you want to be completely anonymous, just sign on to a Zoom and have a black screen the whole time. There's so many ways to do it now. Yeah. And just listen. Maybe it's an internal dialogue with yourself at that point until you're comfortable talking. But I actually didn't know that AA was about sobriety. I thought that we go and talk about our drinking and the mistakes that we made and try to be better and try to drink less. So I feel like I was tricked, like, but yeah, I mean,
try and drink less.
Yeah,
that's what
we just kind of help each other.
We still get to drink, but just drink less.
Correct. Yes.
Oh yeah, no.
That's what I thought. And then I saw the 25, a balloon in the shape of the number 25. I was like, what is that guy celebrating? 25 years sober.
His kid's birthday or something?
Exactly. I was like, shit.
So that's the other. So yeah, now that we're talking about this, is like, so thinking about dry January, it's like, I think like, my thing is, and they talk about it in the book. They say it in meetings all the time. You just have to not drink for today, that kind of stuff, or just for today. It's one of the slogans, one day at a time.
Yeah.
But if you're reading the big book, it says, "Are you ready to quit now and for good?" Right? It literally says. I don't know if it says exactly that, but it pretty much says that, right? And so it's like, so yes, the idea is that, like, you are prepared to stop drinking now for good, but you only do that with the concept of one day at a time. So it's not like you're forgetting that larger concept, right?
Absolutely. That's the goal. Yeah.
So, and again, I read This Naked Mind. Have you ever read This Naked Mind?
Mm-mm.
So I got into that in my I'm not an alcoholic phase. Right? And I was all into it. I was like, this, it was beautiful, because the fact is like, she had a really good way of talking about alcohol. And it was like, and then I equated that same kind of attitude to like smoking and other things. But it's like, alcohol is literally, I mean, why do they call it poison, right? It's poison. It's literally a poison. And it's like, and then if you really think about like, how much poison am I injecting today? Or how much poison am I digesting today? How much poison am I going to smoke today? It's like, because it literally, all these things are literally, that's what it is. No amount of alcohol, no matter what study or whatever, wine consortium has presented a new article about how healthy wine is.
So silly.
It's fucking bullshit. There is no amount of alcohol that is good for you. Not a single amount. And it's like, and of course, having wine is better than having hard liquor, because just alcohol content alone, you can't consume that much without, without having to go to the bathroom all the time.
I guess the elevator's always going down, and we can get off at any floor that we want. And it doesn't have to hit bottom. And think about, like, when you were saying alcohol just doesn't help anything. Think about people in your life who have either started drinking less or got sober and what happened to their lives. And then think about the people who started drinking more or started doing more drugs and what happened to their, like, I've never met someone who's like, I took up drinking this year and it's just helped my life so much.
Awesome.
Right? It's just not, and it only goes in one direction. Like, you can fight it and maybe try to have less, but I really, like you said in the big book, I really like when they give you the option and say, if you don't think you're an alcoholic, go try some controlled drinking. So they're telling you, try it. Yeah. You might not be, like, but if you're asking the question, like you said about your wife, people who don't, it's almost if you're looking up symptoms on WebMD for the flu. If you didn't think you had the flu. You weren't looking up whether or not you have the flu,
Yeah, exactly. Like I have I'm breathing natural and deep, and I don't have a stuffy nose. And
but let me just see what people who have the flu experience. That's really what it is. I took all of the tests. I read all of the things.
Yeah.
And people who don't have a problem with it don't do that. They just don't.
You know, but there's a the improv side of me is like, we should bring up all these diseases. Like,
I know, right?
Like, let me check my genitals. I don't have any sores down there. But I wonder if I have herpes. You know, that kind of
or a peanut allergy. Every time I eat peanuts, this happens. Let me see. You know, every time I drink alcohol, I can't control it. Let me see. Yeah. It's the same freaking thing. It's become so normalized in our culture that it's treated as something different than a disease.
Yeah, and I think, you know, your point of it, same thing as a big book. You know, it gets worse, never better. Right? That's exactly the idea. It's like, you know, my drinking career was never it was never an upward trajectory. It was never like I never had that moment like where even still like some of my best times drinking literally like were again some of my worst times, you know. So it could literally be like we go on vacation or whatever, and of course, and then you know all the things that you don't realize that you missed out on, right? Like as you got sober, you kind of like, oh my God, like. So that's the other thing is like hindsight is totally 20/20 as well. And then so when you get some time sober and you're 30 days sober, it would benefit you at the end of, if you do make it to 30 days, which I doubt most people will, because by the way, that's how the stats look as well. I love Dry January stats because we get just a ton, we double our listens basically. And then throughout the whole, so right at the beginning of Dry January, like whoop, and it goes up, and then just a steady decline all the way down back to normal listening levels. And it's just, I mean, it's hilarious, but
it's again, like you can feel the denial, right?
The denial. Like, not only, so initially I see the desperation in a dramatic line going all the to double listens, you know? And then, so you see that that's the desperation and then the denial. That's the arc of it all. And it's really sad. So I say at the end of your 30 days, it's like really, if you make it that long, take a look back at what your like time has been like in this last 30 days. And just to understand that, you know, you understand like money management, compounding interest, right? Like imagine that was your life, not just in this 30 days, but for the next 360. What if you could do it a whole nother year? How the improvement that you've gained over these last 30 days, imagine that now extended to 365. That would be like, I would love people to really try to have that vision for it. So that was the thing I didn't do at first. And then when I got into, at 60 days, I knew I was going to drink again, right? Like after I made it my 30 days, I was like, well, if I did 30 days, I can certainly do more. And then,
like and then there's a finish line, so it's not as intimidating.
But at 60 days, I was like, I know I'm going to drink again. And I was like, and I had looked at my relationship with alcohol. I'm like, oh, I had been on forums. Like you said, I had talked to other people. I started to have more of a relationship I started having more of a conversation about it. And it made more sense to me that, oh my gosh, like I am one of them. And I was just like, dang it. And so I was still questioning it. Even at 60 days though, I knew I was going to drink again. And I was like, I don't want to do that, but I feel so compelled to do it. And I was just like, so it's almost like I literally like, I just, then at that point, that's when I went to a meeting for the first time because I was 60 days sober. And I was just like, I know I can't do this. I know it. I'm totally going to drink.
Good for you.
And I had to go. Yeah. But it took all that pain before that to
you don't get to all that. It takes every blow it takes, but it doesn't have to. And that's our message to the listener. And I think it's interesting how you said, you know, if 30 days can feel this illuminating or whatever the experience is, imagine going a year. And when I first got sober, and this is very common, people tend to look forward, like, what about if I go to a wedding, or what if on New Year's I want a glass of champagne, blah, blah, blah. And now I see it so differently. Like you said, all the things that we missed. I'm so happy I can enjoy those things without alcohol and be fully present. Like that's the gift now. I'm not saying, oh my God, how am I going to get through this wedding? At the beginning I did, because I didn't know how to do anything. But then once you feel that gift of presence and awareness, you're like, thank God. I wish I did this sooner. I wish I didn't miss all of those experiences in the past.
What the listeners don't see is me completely nodding my head. You're giving me nodding head because I literally, because I totally understand it. Just the simple gift of awareness is so hard to understand and comprehend, because what we don't see when we're drinking is that lack, because we just don't see it, you know. And sometimes it's been so long since we've drawn a steady sober breath over a period of time, that we now appreciate this awareness and this quote unquote awakeness. And again, that's why people change in recovery. That's why people change in sobriety. That's why they and vice versa. You know, when people pick back up, they turn into different people, right? Because they definitely they close off and they have other priorities. And when you're awake and you're aware and you start to appreciate the daily of our existence, everything is a little bit more beautiful. Everything's a little bit more, enjoyable. Yeah. And, you actually get to do it, which is the best part. So, but I think early recovery and dry January crowds, they're not interested in any of that discussion. They don't give a shit. It's like really what they want to hear is that I'm going to take off 5 pounds because I'm not pounding beer right now. And then their focus is always going to be shit like I'm going to the gym and I'm going to get sober. Half of this audience right now is listening to us running on a treadmill. You know what I mean? And if you're doing that, by all means,
going
subscribe.
To happy hour, going to happy hour right after.
Exactly. They're gonna quit and delete this podcast and go straight to happy hour.
I think something that helped me in the beginning too was like you said, looking online and looking on those forums and finding people that I looked up to who had good lives, who didn't seem completely boring. There's a lot of people get sober a lot of different ways than AA, if that intimidates you, and just looking up, maybe even, I don't know who heads Veganuary. I'm sorry, I'm doing Vegan January too.
Oh my gosh, you did.
I'm planning an event for that, so that's why it was on my mind. Nice. It's the same thing. It's like, curious about being vegan? Try it. Yeah. So anyway, little plug for animal rights. But for someone trying dry January, just keeping that in mind, that there's a lot of different ways and there's a lot of tools on the internet and people talking about it. Maybe even someone you look up to like Bradley Cooper or Robert Downey Jr. or these sober people who say that it's saved their lives, and they're not complete boring. We're not a glum lot, right?
Yeah, you're not a bunch of
So I had to find people I looked up to and be like, I want that life. I wouldn't have been able to do it without that. Because the alcoholic to me was, the homeless man sitting under a bridge. So,
and then the sobriety person is always just like the wallflower or somebody who isn't doing shit or having fun, etc. Yeah, it's like, and I think the other thing to mention here is that just as to keep people going in their dry Januaries, you don't even really get the benefits of if you're a daily drinker like I was. You really do not even begin to get the benefits of sobriety, from an emotional standpoint, from a physiological standpoint, really until about 6-8 months, right? That's when you really start to holy shit, I'm coming alive, right? Yeah.
Just from a biological level, it's still in your body and your brain's still all altered. So that's a really good point. If you really want to give yourself the chance, then.
Yeah. And then even if you are, even if you're within that 6 months, if you relapse within the 6 months, it's proven that basically your brain, your elasticity, or what is it called? Plasticity?
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah, neuroplasticity. Yeah. So it snaps right back to the same pathways as when you were active drinking within the 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is if you really want to stretch that out even further, you are. you will up to 5 years is really what it takes to recover from full blown addiction and alcoholism.
Wow. I didn't know
So
that
yeah,
statistic.
and so but you will never get more recovered than you will than at 5 years, and that's why they always say in our meeting rooms that we tend to attend, don't kill yourself in the first 5 years because you'll be killing the wrong person, right? Because by the time 5
That's
years
really-
rolls around, you're a completely different person. Most of the time, your head pops out of your ass at about 5 years. so just one way to look at it. One way to look at it. So I guess so Lindsey, tell me, like, if somebody is now at day, I don't know, let's say this will launch tomorrow, day 5, right? And they've been and so, oh my gosh, like this will be like their first, so they'll be like the end of their first weekend, right? And if they made it, but they were really struggling to make it, say, like, what would you tell that person that was super struggling? What would you tell that dry January person?
I would tell them to just trust the process, because even though they're struggling, they know what the other struggle looks like, and that hasn't been working for them. So just be open to trying something else. Reach out to people. You can reach out to me, DM me on Instagram at Spirit Vigilante, or someone that you know or trust.
Don't
And
DM
just
me
talk
because
about
I'll be sloppy about it.
You'll be what?
I'll be sloppy about it. I probably won't get back to him. Probably like, it's fucking spam.
I mean, yeah, and that's not what people want to hear. People do not want to hear that connection is the opposite of addiction, but really connecting with people, knowing that you're not alone in that. And there's probably a lot of Dry January resources where people are talking about that and sharing how they feel on day 5 too. So, just try, if you can just ride it out for a little bit longer and do it for one more day and then reevaluate. I just highly, highly suggest that, because you don't want to miss out on the gift that you could be about to open.
There's a guy on reddit.com/r/stop drinking that I used to follow a lot. And because when I first got sober this time around, that's where I went, because I didn't want to go to AA. And I thought I knew that shit. I really did. I didn't know shit. God, I didn't know shit. But I followed this dude. He had 3 steps to follow, and I just thought, oh, I could do 3 of those, right?
Okay.
But he had one was wake up and commit to staying sober that day, right?
Okay.
I'm like, okay, I can totally do that. He had 2, which is he said go to a meeting. I couldn't do that one. So then he had 3, which was make it to his pillow sober, right? And so I only did 2 of those 3 steps, right? That's for the first 60 days of my sobriety. And so, and again, I was so, like, I had an aversion to anything 12-step, anything spiritual or God-related or anything, and I wanted nothing to do with that shit. But I didn't understand what the sole purpose of AA was, right? I didn't understand what their primary purpose was, and it's and the only requirement for me to walk into a meeting, to attend a meeting, was the desire to stop drinking. It wasn't that I had to have a God. It wasn't that I had to have to battle with concepts or convert to a religion or any of those things. It was literally just to have a desire to stop drinking. And I didn't know any of that stuff, but I thought that I knew that what they were about, and they really weren't about that.
Right.
So I wasn't prepared to go to a meeting just because of that prejudice of 12-step land and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So,
and what we see in the media is not very accurately represented.
No, it's not accurate at all. So if you could do nothing, then, wake up and commit to staying sober, and even just white knuckle it until you went to bed that night, right? Let me just say, for me, it was a different voice that I started to hear by doing that, right? That enabled me to seek help and reach out and communicate and connect, right? Like you say, but until I could put a plug in a jug, until I could just, like, again, there's a lot of white knuckling. And let me just say, preface this, as you well know, like, if you are a heavy drinker, do not try to just detox at home. If you wake up and you have
very important
shakes and you are like absolutely like chemically dependent, quote unquote, if you are physically dependent upon alcohol, it is not wise to just quit cold turkey. It can cause serious injury and or death. It's a real thing. It's not a joke. And that's the idea behind going to a detox. So so if you're doing 30-day challenge and you're a chronic drinker, and people have begged you to stop at times, believe me, you're going to need to go to detox. So by all means, don't neglect some of that stuff, and or make a doctor's appointment and consult with your doctor and get honest with your doctor. Right, best way to do that stuff. So Dry January is great for those people who are like kind of like sober curious or whatever, but it's for the real chronic drinker, and you're just like, I'm gonna put the plug in the jug and I'm gonna grit my teeth and make it. I had a really hard time. I actually had like hallucinations. I probably should have gone to medical detox and I didn't, and it was like I couldn't get to sleep. It was like old sweats and stuff like that. I had night sweats because of all this shit. And I did have the shakes at times, and it was, but I was lucky enough that in my last days, I had kind of tapered off a little bit. I'd been able to like not have it be so impactful. But if I would have done it in the height of my drinking, I probably would have had a lot more to go through then. So Lindsey, what do we say to the kind, wonderful Dry January people out there? I guess in terms of like, first of all, buy the book, right? 366 effing days sober, or the spiritvigilante.com. And then are you doing any book signings or anything? Have you ever done a book signing?
Yeah, I had one this past couple of weekends ago.
Cool.
And I'm trying to plan some more around the DC metro area.
So if you are in the DC metro area, please like and subscribe so that you can understand where to go see and get Lindsey's book. I think that'll be awesome. And then, so what is your catchphrase to the kind, wonderful young people out there?
Trust your truth.
And I say, stay active, stay sober, and and what's your vegan? What's it?
Veganuary.
and have a good Veganuary.
So good.
See you, people.
Bye.
SoberPod.com. Yeah. It was a sight to see him. Breakfast with Sprite and Seagrams. Wrestling with my vices, exercising my demons. My blessings were blocked, so I never got the message. I'm stressing, I'm only 12 steps from an exit. Regret it, because my imperfections were perfected. I ain't run from it, I accept it and rep it. It's a badge to me, good stories come from a tragedy. And when you survive, the glory will come in Act 3. The wait's over, 366 days sober. Morning affirmations that can start the day for you. Use my favorite bookmark for a placeholder. Finish when the day's over. Okay. Yeah, SoberPod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.